Listen, the Washington Mystics just put belt to ass on Angel Reese and the Chicago Sky. Sonya Citron was out there cooking with hot grease. Stir the pot, stir the pot. Keep cooking, Sonya. That was a show.
What happens when the hype train finally runs out of track? Live in front of millions. Last night, Angel Reese and the Chicago Sky faced off against the Washington Mystics, a team most analysts had written off as an easy win. Instead, what unfolded was an on-court reality check so sharp it had fans laughing, critics gloating, and even neutral viewers shaking their heads.
Me bow, me bow, me bow, me bow, me bow, me bow. Yeah! Again! Do it for me. Me bow!
And the sting wasn't just in the loss, it was in the way it happened. The Mystics didn't just win, they exposed glaring weaknesses in Reese's game. Weaknesses her biggest supporters have been desperately trying to downplay. Missed defensive assignments, inefficient shooting, and a lack of adaptability under pressure turned what could have been a quiet defeat into a viral talking point. The live TV cameras didn't miss a thing, and neither did social media. And then came the comparisons, relentless, unflattering, and impossible to ignore. Once again, Caitlin Clark's name was dragged into the conversation, with fans quick to point out the gap between hype and performance. So was this just an off night, or the first public crack in the Bayou Barbie brand? Let's break it down. What really happened, why it matters, and what this means for Angel Reese moving forward.
6 for 16, shot 35%, 22 points, 13 rebounds, got to the free throw line multiple times, 11 free throws for Angel Reese, but the bloopies were blooping, and oh boy, here we go. All right, we go, right, easy open layup, and a stoink right off the bottom of the backboard, and we're just asking for a foul. We're asking for a foul. We throw the ball off the bottom, that's like the bottom side of the backboard, asking for a foul, no foul to be given in this current point in time.
You could feel the tension in the air before tip-off. This wasn't just another WNBA game. It was another chapter in the ongoing narrative that's been driving clicks, tweets, and highlight reels all season. Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark. Even though Clark wasn't on the floor that night, the comparison loomed like a shadow over everything Reese did. The Washington Mystics came in as the heavy underdogs. On paper, they shouldn't have been much of a threat to the Chicago Sky. But sports aren't played on paper, and what was about to happen would remind everyone exactly why. The pre-game energy told its own story.
First of all, we all know the Indiana Fever had the best young core in the league with Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark. Forget young core, that's probably the best duo, period. So, during that whole thing, when she said, yo, we the skyscrapers, best young duo in the league. When she said that, I told y'all, we all knew CC and AB was better. That's not even a conversation. I said, wait a second. Are y'all sure, Angel, are you sure you and Camila are better than Sonya Citron and Kiki? The last I checked, the Washington Mystics had 2 rookies that made the All-Star team.
Reese, never one to shy away from the spotlight, had been riding high on her public image. The Bayou Barbie, who had embraced trash talk, fashion statements, and an unapologetic swagger. Clips circulated before the game showing her laughing with teammates, posing courtside, and even tossing out a confident nod when asked about facing the Mystics. It wasn't arrogance, it was her brand. She'd earned her reputation for big moments, but big moments demand big performances. From the opening tip, the cracks began to show. Early in the first quarter, Reese had a clear path to the basket. A simple layup, bread and butter for a player of her caliber, clanged off the rim. The crowd's collective gasp was immediate, but what followed was worse. A quick transition bucket from the Mystics that seemed to flip the tone of the game instantly. Then came the turnovers. Not just the kind where a pass gets tipped. These were unforced errors, the kind that scream mental lapse. Twice in a row, she lost the handle under minimal defensive pressure. The live broadcast didn't let it slide. One commentator couldn't resist. Wow. Reese just got cooked by a rookie on that possession. The camera cut to Reese's face, tight-lipped, clearly frustrated, but the damage to the momentum was already done. Defensively, things unraveled even further. The Mystics exploited her positioning over and over, drawing her into mismatches or pulling her away from the paint where she's most comfortable. On one possession, a Mystics guard slipped past her for an uncontested layup. No help defense, no chase down, just an open lane. It was the kind of breakdown that coaches replay in film sessions with a long pause afterward. Social media, of course, was merciless. Within minutes, memes started flying. One split screen went viral. On the left, Reese's game face mid-third quarter. On the right, a screenshot of a tweet reading, "Angel Reese when she realizes Queen of the Court ain't a participation trophy." Another featured a gif of someone packing a suitcase, captioned, "Angel heading home after the Mystics made her their practice drill." The worst part, the Mystics weren't just capitalizing, they were enjoying it. Every defensive stop, every bucket over Reese came with visible energy from their bench. The underdog smelled blood. And as the game wore on, the scoreline started to feel less like an upset in the making and more like a statement. The live TV coverage only amplified the sting. Every missed shot from Reese was followed by a slow motion replay. Every turnover was paired with an overhead graphic of her stat line. Numbers that told the uncomfortable truth. She wasn't producing. And even though it's just one game, narratives don't wait for season averages to even out. The story had already begun writing itself. The hype versus the reality. By the fourth quarter, the body language said it all. Reese's usual fire, clapping after big plays, jawing with opponents, was gone. She was quieter, more measured, like a player trying to hold it together while the walls closed in. The Mystics closed out the win with a comfortable lead, and the camera caught Reese walking us off, expression unreadable but heavy. The final buzzer didn't just mark the end of the game, it marked the beginning of a wave of online commentary that would dwarf the box score. People weren't just talking about the loss, they were dissecting every frame of it. Analysts questioned her defensive reads. Fans debated whether the Bayou Barbie brand could survive nights like this. And of course, the Caitlin Clark comparisons lit up again, with countless posts reminding everyone that Clark's stat lines in similar situations were far stronger. In the end, the meltdown wasn't about one bad game, it was about what it symbolized. For months, Angel Reese has been the face of confidence in the WNBA's new era, but confidence without execution is a dangerous game, and on this night, against the team she was expected to beat, the gap between persona and performance became impossible to ignore. The Mystics didn't just win, they exposed. And as the dust settled, one question echoed louder than any final score. Was this just a stumble, or the start of a fall? The buzzer had barely stopped echoing when the post-game fallout began. Reporters swarmed the locker room, ready to turn the night's drama into tomorrow's headlines. Angel Reese, to her credit, didn't duck the questions, but her tone was as defiant as ever. "Stats don't tell the whole story," she said, leaning back in her chair. "I know what I bring to my team. Y'all can look at numbers all day, but there's more to basketball than that." It was a classic Reese response, confident, unapologetic, and unwilling to concede ground. The problem was, the numbers weren't just bad, they were glaring. 8 points on inefficient shooting, multiple turnovers, and defensive lapses that led directly to Mystics buckets. If her words were meant to squash criticism, they didn't land that way. On social media, clips of her interview were instantly paired with her low-light reel from the game. One tweet summed it up: "Stats don't tell the whole story, but that story is still a comedy." Her coach stepped up next, clearly aware that the media storm was already in motion. He offered what felt like an awkward, half-hearted defense. "She's growing, she's learning. Nights like this happen to everyone," he said, carefully choosing words that sounded supportive but carried the weight of realism. It was the kind of comment you give when you're protecting a player publicly, but you know the film session tomorrow will be anything but gentle. The bigger problem here isn't just one bad performance, it's the season-long trend lines that are starting to show. Reese's shooting percentage has dipped noticeably since the start of the year, a worrying sign for a player whose game is built around high-efficiency looks near the basket. Her free throw percentage remains inconsistent, costing the team valuable points in close games. Add to that a growing number of technical fouls born from her fiery on-court demeanor, and the narrative of emotional leader is starting to bleed into liability under pressure. When you stack those realities against the constant backdrop of Caitlin Clark's season, the contrast becomes even sharper. While Reese battles efficiency issues and disciplinary headlines, Clark is making a Rookie of the Year case that feels all but locked. Her shooting percentages are climbing, her assist numbers are among the league's best for her position, position, and she's already delivered multiple signature performances under the brightest lights. That's where the Clark shadow looms heaviest, not just in the media, but in the psychology of fans and the league at large. It's one thing to have an off year, it's another to have that off year play out in direct comparison to someone being hailed as a generational talent. The rivalry label, whether Reese likes it or not, means her every misstep gets magnified against Clark's every triumph. And this isn't just happening in press conferences or box scores. The memes, the TikToks, the YouTube compilations, they've turned into a running scoreboard of their own. When your rival is Rookie of the Year material and you're getting looped into videos set to clown music, the PR battle is already lost before the next game even tips off. What makes this situation even trickier is that Reese isn't without talent or value. She's still a ferocious rebounder, still capable of dominating stretches when the game flows her way. But right now, the consistency isn't there. The highs are drowned out by the lows, and the lows are amplified by the ecosystem of modern sports media. The Mystics' loss might not sink the Sky's season, but it risks becoming one of those inflection points where perception shifts. Before, Reese's bravado was seen as part of her charm, a star unafraid to talk her talk. Now it's being reframed as arrogance without output. That's a dangerous place for an athlete to be, especially in a league where marketability matters almost as much as production. The path forward is as clear as it is difficult. Reese will need to broaden her game, sharpen her efficiency, and tighten her emotional control on the court. That means investing in skill development, particularly her mid-range and free throw shooting, while also learning how to stay engaged even when things aren't going her way. She'll also need to reclaim the narrative. That doesn't mean avoiding confidence. It means backing it up with performances that make the highlight reels for the right reasons. A 20-point, 15-rebound night against a playoff caliber opponent would do more to silence critics than any post-game soundbite ever could. As for the Clark factor, the best move might be to stop chasing the comparison altogether. Caitlin Clark is on her own trajectory, one that's currently skyrocketing. Trying to keep pace by force will only lead to more nights like the Mystics game, overhyped matchups that turn into magnified letdowns. Instead, Reese could focus on being the best version of herself, carving out her own lane rather than battling to stay in someone else's. But until that transformation happens, the fallout from nights like this will keep sticking. The media will keep replaying the lowlights, the crowd will keep chanting for Clark, and the internet will keep doing what it does best, turning a bad game into a viral punchline. The Mystics game was a loss in the standings, but the real damage was in the perception game. Right now, Angel Reese is at a crossroads. Evolve and redefine her image, or risk becoming a case study in how hype fades when it's not matched by performance. The next chapter is hers to write, but after this week, the basketball world will be watching every pen stroke. So, was this just a bad night or proof that Angel Reese is officially overhyped? That's the debate lighting up comment sections right now, and honestly, it's one worth having, because one game doesn't define a player. But when the same weaknesses keep showing up, you have to start asking, is this a slump, or is this the ceiling? Look, there's no denying Reese's talent. She's a fierce competitor, a strong rebounder, and someone who brings a certain fire to the court that you can't teach, but fire without focus burns out fast. When you pair her struggles with Caitlin Clark's rise, the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. Clark is putting up big numbers, carrying her team in crunch time, and delivering on the hype she came into the league with. Meanwhile, Reese's biggest highlights lately seem to be coming from her post-game quotes or from opponents' TikToks. And that's the heart of the conversation. Does Angel Reese need to step up her game to justify the spotlight she's getting? Or is it unfair to measure her against Clark at all? Because if we're being real, their games aren't even built the same way. Clark is an offensive weapon who can score from anywhere on the floor and orchestrate an entire offense. Reese is an interior presence who thrives on hustle plays, physicality, and dominating the paint. The issue is that when her paint game is neutralized, like it was against the Mystics, she hasn't yet shown she can pivot to another gear. Some fans will argue that she's young, that she has time to grow, and that we shouldn't write her off over a rough stretch. Fair point. But others will say that with all the trash talk, all the self-branding, and all the attention, there's an expectation to produce now. You can't be marketed as the face of the league's next era and have games where you're a non-factor. That's not how rivalries work, and it's definitely not how you win over the skeptical crowd. And then there's the crowd factor. Literally, when opposing fans are chanting, "Where's Caitlin?" While you're at the free throw line, that's not just playful heckling. That's a signal that your name is being used as a measuring stick, and right now you're coming up short in those comparisons. You can ignore the noise, sure, but if the noise keeps getting louder, eventually it's going to drown out everything else. The Mystics game will be remembered for two things: the scoreboard and the viral clowned moment. That one play, losing the ball to a smaller defender, falling, and watching the Mystics score in transition, will live on as long as the internet decides it's funny, and the internet never forgets. The only real way to make people forget a lowlight is to replace it with something unforgettable in a good way. So here's where you come in. I want to know, does Reese need to evolve her game to match the hype? Or should we stop forcing this comparison to Caitlin Clark and just let her be who she is? Is this a case of unrealistic expectations, or has the Bayou Barbie brand outgrown the production behind it? Drop your take in the comments and let's get this debate going. I'll be going through them, and I want to see if the consensus leans toward patience or pressure. And if you're into this kind of breakdown, the drama, the narratives, the moments that get fans talking, hit that subscribe button right now, because trust me, the WNBA storylines this season are just getting started. Angel Reese's next big test? The Las Vegas Aces. Yes, the defending champions. If you thought the Mystics exposed some flaws, wait until she's up against A'ja Wilson in that juggernaut of a roster. Mark your calendars, because if Reese doesn't bring her A game, we might just be adding another chapter to the humiliation tour. And you better believe we'll be here to break it all down, play by play, meme by meme. So subscribe, turn on notifications, and get ready, because the Aces are next on Reese's humiliation tour. Every game has a turning point. The single moment fans will remember more than the final score. For Angel Reese, that moment came midway through the third quarter, and unfortunately for her, it was a clip tailor-made for endless internet loops. The play started innocently enough. Reese had position in the post against a smaller Mystics forward. This was her territory. Size advantage, footwork, and a prime chance to remind everyone why she's billed as a dominant inside presence. She caught the entry pass, took one power dribble, and then it all unraveled. The smaller defender timed her move perfectly, swiping the ball clean out of Reese's hands. In her scramble to recover, Reese lost her footing and stumbled backward, crashing to the floor. The Mystics scooped up the loose ball and pushed it in transition, scoring an uncontested layup at the other end. Meanwhile, the cameras stayed locked on Reese, still sitting on the hardwood, palms out, staring at the refs in disbelief. It wasn't just a turnover, it was a sequence that screamed outplayed, and the internet smelled blood instantly. Within minutes, the clip hit Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, plastered with sarcastic captions like "dominant post player," "everyone," and "Bayou Barbie" or "Bayou Bambi." One slowed down replay even zoomed in on the exact moment the ball slipped away, complete with a clown horn sound effect. It was brutal. The broadcast booth didn't let her off the hook either. One commentator chuckled mid-replay. "That's not all-star behavior, that's AAU stuff." Another piled on, "You've got a 6-inch height advantage there and you're telling me you can't even get a shot up?" It wasn't malicious, but it was the kind of frank analysis that stings because it's true. And just when you thought the humiliation had peaked, the networks rolled a side-by-side comparison to Caitlin Clark's performance from earlier in the week. On the left, Reese's stat line for the night: 8 points, 6 rebounds, 4 turnovers. On the right, Clark's 30-point explosion against a top-tier defense. The contrast was impossible to ignore. Clark was shown draining deep threes, zipping no-look assists, and waving to a roaring crowd. Reese's real: the turnover, the fall, and a missed bunny in the paint. Fans didn't waste time connecting the dots. One viral tweet read, "The media wanted us to believe Reese was on Clark's level. Meanwhile, one's hitting 30 and the other's hitting the floor." The replies were a mix of laughing emojis, edited GIFs, and stat comparisons. It wasn't just the mistake, it was the optics. Reese is known for her swagger, her intensity, and her willingness to talk big. That works when you're dominating, but when you get stripped clean by a shorter player, hit the floor, and watch the other team score while you're still arguing with the refs, the confidence reads differently. The highlight or lowlight became symbolic. The mighty brought low in the most public, replayable way possible. What made it worse was how perfectly timed it was for the narrative. This wasn't a bad play in a quiet, low-stakes matchup. It was a nationally televised game with the ongoing Reese versus Clark storyline humming in the background. Every misstep was magnified, every weakness broadcast in high definition. By the time the fourth quarter rolled around, the clowned moment had taken on a life of its own. Sports talk shows were already queuing it up for for morning debates. Meme accounts had clipped it with circus music. Even neutral WNBA fans admitted it was the kind of sequence you just can't live down quickly. One moment doesn't define a career, but in the social media era, it can define a news cycle. And for Angel Reese, this was the kind of viral lowlight that can overshadow an entire game. The scoreboard said the Mystics won, but for the internet, the lasting image was clearer. A fallen queen trying to figure out what just happened. Why Reese isn't Clark? Let's get one thing out of the way. Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark are two completely different players. That's not an insult, it's just reality. The problem is that much of the media and fan chatter has lumped them together in the same rivalry box, which inevitably invites side-by-side comparisons. And when you break it down, the gap in skill sets, impact, and leadership styles is hard to ignore. Start with the obvious: scoring range. Caitlin Clark's offensive toolkit stretches the floor like few players in the WNBA can. She's lethal from deep, step backs, pull-ups, logo threes. Defenses are forced to pick her up 30 feet from the basket, which opens up passing lanes and creates chaos for opposing rotations. In contrast, Reese's offensive game is far more limited. She operates best in the paint, using her size and strength to muscle in close shots. When she's on, she can be effective in that role. But the problem is predictability. If you take away her comfort zones, she doesn't have the perimeter shooting or advanced ball handling to punish defenses the way Clark does. Then there's playmaking. Clark isn't just a scorer, she's a facilitator. Watch her for a full game and you'll see constant communication, pointing out mismatches, calling out plays, rallying her teammates after bad possessions. She demands the ball when her team needs a bucket and delivers more often than not. Reese, on the other hand, can fade from the leadership spotlight when things aren't going her way. During the loss to the Mystics, the difference was glaring. The live broadcast caught multiple shots of Reese sulking, head down, hands on hips, while the team huddled. It's not that she doesn't care, it's that her energy dips in ways that affect the group's morale. The leadership contrast isn't just on the court, it's in how they respond to adversity. Clark will get in a teammate's ear after a turnover, not to scold, but to reset, and encourage. Reese tends to direct her frustration outward, whether toward the refs or through visible annoyance at missed opportunities. That body language matters, especially when the cameras are rolling and the crowd is watching. Speaking of the crowd, the Mystics game had its own moment that underlined the comparison. In the fourth quarter, as Reese stepped to the free throw line, a section of the crowd started chanting, "Where's Caitlin? Where's Caitlin?" It wasn't just trolling, it was a pointed reminder of who many fans consider the gold standard right now. Reese missed the first free throw, which only amplified the chant. Social media picked up on the crowd's taunt instantly. TikTok trends popped up within hours. One particularly viral clip featured the chant overlaid with footage of Reese defending a pick and roll, slowed down and set to clown music. The caption read, "Angel Reese guarding in space is like watching a YouTube buffering wheel." Harsh? Absolutely, but it resonated because it played into the perception gap between her and Clark. Even in pure numbers, the difference is striking. Clark routinely puts up double-doubles with assists, sometimes flirting with triple-doubles, while hitting 40% plus from three. Reese's production is more rebound heavy, with scoring nights that fluctuate depending on matchups. In the Mystics game, Reese's stat line, 8 points on poor efficiency, was instantly compared to Clark's recent 30-point explosion. The side-by-side made the rounds on ESPN and Bleacher Report, further fueling the narrative. What's important here is that this isn't just about one bad night. It's about the sustainability of a game built on versatility versus one built on physical dominance alone. Clark can adapt when her shot isn't falling, by distributing, stretching defenses, or drawing fouls from distance. Reese doesn't yet have that plan B. If she's neutralized in the paint, her impact drops dramatically. The frustrating part for Reese's fans is that she does have tools that could make her more competitive in this rivalry. She's a tenacious rebounder, she has the size to be a defensive anchor, and she plays with an edge that can rattle opponents. But until she expands her range, tightens her handle, and learns to command her team through the highs and lows, the Clark comparisons will keep feeling lopsided. The Mystics' loss was a perfect storm for that narrative. Reese's weaknesses were spotlighted on national television, amplified by live crowd chants, and immortalized through viral TikToks. Meanwhile, Clark's highlights from a separate game were circulating in the same feed, creating an unflattering juxtaposition that fans ate up. At the end of the day, this isn't about tearing down Angel Reese. It's about acknowledging why she isn't Caitlin Clark, and why pretending otherwise does her no favors. Rivalries are great for the sport, but they work best when both sides are truly matched. Right now, the skill gap is too wide, the leadership gap too glaring, and the public perception too tilted for the comparison to hold weight. Until Reese addresses those areas, moments like the Mystics' meltdown will keep being framed not as isolated setbacks, but as proof of the difference between hype and the real deal.